If you've ever wanted to play an older game that's no longer available or wondered how people are replaying entire classic consoles on modern devices, you've probably heard of emulation. From the outside, emulation feels like a lifesaver for nostalgic gamers who just want to relive their childhood. But once you actually start using it, you're forced to deal with compatibility issues,
Relax.
endless settings menus, crashes, and the uncomfortable question of whether what you're doing is even legal. So yeah, hopefully this doesn't start a war in the comments, but grab some popcorn because today we're breaking down the good, the bad, and the downright ugly side of emulation. Lately, emulation has been everywhere. You can't turn around without seeing a new handheld pop up promising slightly better performance, a new form factor, or just enough improvement to make you consider buying another one. And honestly, there's a reason for that. Emulation is awesome. Now, I want to be clear. I'm an original hardware kind of guy. I love my original systems. I still collect them, I still play them, and I still get that itch to buy more, which never really goes away. There's something special about original hardware. The perfect compatibility, the nostalgia, having everything hooked up and ready to go, that experience is still unmatched. But emulation fills a very real void. I don't have unlimited time, and I have way too many games I want to play. Emulation is a big reason I've actually finished more games recently. At its core, emulation is simple. It's just software designed to mimic old hardware. You load a game file, usually called a ROM, and the emulator runs it the same way the original console would. That's it. And once you understand that, it's easy to see why emulation is so popular. Instead of being locked into one ecosystem, emulation lets you play your games on the device you choose. Without emulation, Nintendo games stay on Nintendo systems, PlayStation games stay on PlayStation systems, and at least for now, they never cross paths. But with emulation, you can play Nintendo, PlayStation, Sega, and let's be honest, not so much Xbox, all on one device. For a lot of people, that's a dream come true. Emulation also lets you experience games the way you want. Want to play Pokemon? You can dig out an old Game Boy Advance, squint at a small, dim screen and deal with aging hardware, or you can play it on a modern, high-resolution display with better controls. And no, I'm not saying that's always better. If you love the CRT look or the exact colors of a Game Boy Advance SP, that's totally valid. Just know there are filters that can help recreate that look too. The point is, wanting modern screens and modern convenience is a perfectly valid reason to choose emulation. And maybe the biggest benefit of all, accessibility. Games go out of print all the time. Digital storefronts shut down. Even Switch games are already disappearing from shelves. Without emulation, playing many older games is limited to people who bought them at launch or people willing to pay absurd resale prices. Pokemon is the perfect example. Right now, generations 1 through 7 are basically unavailable. You can't buy them new physically and you can't download them from an eShop. You can only buy them from resellers, and that money doesn't go to Game Freak or Nintendo. And even if you do own a physical copy, those don't last forever. I've got a copy of Alpha Sapphire that just doesn't load anymore. Cartridges fail, discs get scratched, consoles die. As more systems fade out of circulation, playing these games becomes harder and more expensive. That's where emulation steps in, and in many cases, preserves gaming history. On top of that, emulation can actually improve games. Upscaled resolutions, HD texture packs, remapped controls, faster load times. But for me, the two biggest advantages are save states and fast forward. Save states let you create instant save points anywhere. No waiting, no menus. At the press of a button, boom, save. And at the press of another button or two, you're right back there. That's a lifesaver for older games that only let you save at specific spots. And for people who don't have hours to replay the same sections anymore and keep dying halfway through missions. Fast forward is just as powerful. Long walks, unskippable cutscenes, grinding in RPGs, we've all been there. Fast forward cuts through the busy work and lets you focus on actually playing the parts of the game you want. For replays especially, it's a massive quality of life improvement. But as great as emulation can be, it can be incredibly frustrating because emulation does not just work. One thing I love about consoles is that you turn them on and play. At least that's how it used to be before developers started shipping out unfinished games with a promise to patch them later. With original hardware, you almost never deal with crashes or major graphical issues. Emulation? That's a not so much. Older systems like NES and SNES run great now, but once you move up in generations, cracks start to show, sometimes literally. You'll run into compatibility issues. A game works on one emulator but not another. Some games require endless tweaking. Others crash randomly, and some games just don't work at all. I'm looking at you, Rogue Squadron 2. This is my biggest frustration with emulation. Instead of spending my time playing games, I sometimes spend more time setting them up. Even when things seem stable, crashes and glitches are always lurking in the background, so you just learn to use save states constantly and hope for the best. Then there are the smaller issues: aspect ratio differences, stretched pixels, black bars, random visual glitches. Many of these problems can be fixed or at least covered over, but that means diving into the settings, which really does create a learning curve for newcomers. Customization is great if you love tweaking, but if you just want to play, it can be overwhelming. Even just setting up how you access your ROMs can feel a bit overwhelming. You can have your games in a simple list, you can add box art, set up entire front ends that completely alter how your emulator looks and feels, and while not necessarily hard to set up, they are not exactly user-friendly either. Thankfully, there's a huge community and plenty of great tutorials out there to help you get through it. Still, even with it all set up perfectly, emulation rarely feels as seamless as original hardware. It may not waste your money, but it can certainly waste your time. And then there's the legal and moral mess. Emulators themselves are legal. That's pretty much settled unless you really get under Nintendo's skin. The real problem is the games. I'm not a lawyer, don't even play one on YouTube, and this isn't legal advice, but generally speaking, dumping a ROM from a game you own is considered okay. The issue comes from downloading ROMs through other means. So here's my take, and you're free to disagree. If a game is no longer being sold and the only way to buy it is from a reseller, I don't believe downloading that game is morally wrong. You're not taking money away from the developer or publisher. They're not offering the product anymore. But if a game is available to buy, especially newer games, then no, you should buy it. Developers deserve to be paid for their work. And if you buy a game but would rather emulate it instead of playing it on whatever platform you bought it, then I don't see an issue there either. I bought Final Fantasy 1 a long time ago in the iOS App Store. If I now would rather play it on my Iron Thor, I know it's AYN, but Iron just sounds better, okay? Then I should be able to do that without judgment. There's a big difference between improving your own gaming experience or preserving inaccessible games and downloading brand new releases for free. And pretending there isn't hurts the entire emulation scene. Really, that's what emulation should be about: preservation, accessibility, and improvement, not entitlement. And yes, of course, there's some cognitive dissonance there. I realize that some people could very rightly consider downloading an old game I never owned as stealing, even if it's not available, and even if buying according to the companies themselves isn't actually ownership anymore. Like I said, my opinion and moral compass on emulation is my own and works for me. You do what works for you. There's also risk involved here. ROM sites exist in a legal gray area, and downloading from the wrong place can mean malware instead of Pokemon Red. You're sailing the high seas here, guys. Sometimes it's worth it, but it's not without danger. In the end, what matters is how we use emulation. Do we use it to play some of our favorite games in a way that's more convenient and more accessible? Or do we use it to exploit companies and hurt the industry? You should always support the companies that make the games you love, because without that support, they're not going to be able to continue making the games that you love. And finally, there's the bigger picture. Companies like Nintendo see every downloaded ROM as a lost sale. I don't see it that way, but I also can't fault them for that very valid viewpoint. They're in business to make money, but most people emulating games either already own them or were never going to buy them anyway. In fact, I think emulation can create sales. I can't buy Metroid Prime 2 or 3 right now, but emulating them so I can play them might get me excited enough to buy Metroid Prime 4. The reviews certainly aren't doing that. That's not lost revenue, that's future revenue. At the end of the day, emulation is just a tool. It can preserve gaming history, make games more accessible, and help people fall in love with old franchises. Or it can be used carelessly and hurt the industry. I know how I use it. I'm curious how you do. Just try not to burn the comment section down.